Hey, Matt here, and welcome to Mob Street. Now, tonight, we're just out here on the back porch, but I want to talk to you about something that a lot of folks have said about a new bike that's out. And I've seen a lot of comments on some of the videos about the TW that I've been doing. A lot of folks are saying, why get the TW? Just go with the new Honda XR150L. And I looked into it, and I want to just go over the specs between the XR150L and the TW200. So I took some notes here, and we're going to get into it. And right off the bat, let me know in the comments below, would you take the XR150 over the TW200? Now, first off, we'll just do flat out engine size. The XR150L is a 149cc air-cooled single-cylinder single-cylinder engine, 4-stroke. The TW is a 196cc single-cylinder, 4-stroke. Okay? Now, compression on both of the bikes is 9.5 to 1. Now, the fuel delivery, everybody's saying, oh, the XR150 is so much better. I mean, they're saying like that they would take it over the TW. Now, the fuel delivery, a lot of folks have always said, you know, I wish they would do one thing with the TW, and that's fuel injection. But the funny thing is the XR150L is a 22 millimeter carb fuel delivery system. The TW is a 28 millimeter carb fuel delivery system. So I really don't get that aspect of it. They're like, oh, it's so much better. I'd just go get the XR. Now, both of these bikes have a 5-speed transmission. They both run the 428 rear chain. Now, the gear ratio on the XR150L is a 17-tooth front and a 49-tooth rear, which gives it a 2.88 to 1 gear ratio. So it's going to be, I would say, a little bit longer legged. Not as much low end grunt, but maybe a little bit more on the top end. I don't know the top speed of it, but a 2.88 to 1 gear ratio, whereas our TW200 is a 14-tooth front and a 50-tooth rear, and that gives us a 3.57 to 1 gear ratio, which, I mean, the TW has been called the two-wheel tractor. It's been called the two-wheel ATV. It's been called, you know, like the low-end grunt, the mountain goat, like just that low-end in power from the TW is something that people absolutely love about the TW. Now, if you take into consideration, you've got 50 more cc's, you've got lower gearing, I think you're going to be able to play in the hills a little bit better on the TW than you will on the XR150L. Now, a 149cc, both of them have the same compression ratio, but that 288 to 1 gear ratio, I think, I mean, with me, just with my weight being, 240, I can get up all sorts of places with the TW, whereas I don't know that I'd be able to do the same on the XR150L just based on my weight alone. Now, a smaller rider, not a big deal. But for somebody that's, a little bit more my size, I don't know if the XR150 is going to have enough grunt to get you up into the hills like the TW does. Now, they're saying, oh, the suspension on the XR is so much better. The front suspension is a 31 millimeter telescopic fork, and it gives you, I think, 7.1 inches of travel. Now, the TW is a 33 millimeter fork, or a telescopic fork, and it has 6.3 inches of travel. Now, the rear suspension, this is where the XR has a little bit of an edge above the TW. So it's got 5.9 inches of travel in the rear, which the TW does as well, 5.9 inches of travel. However, the XR150L has an adjustable spring preload. So you can change it up a little bit back there. I don't know exactly how many adjustments that you can make, but I do know that they are available on the XR150 where the TW200 is not. Now, the front brake, both on the TW and on the XR150, They're both a front disc brake. Now, the XR actually has a little bit bigger disc. It's a 240 millimeter, whereas the TW has a 220 millimeter. So the disc might be a little bit bigger. Stopping power, I don't know exactly how it's going to be. There's a few more variables in here that I want to discuss before we talk about the braking power on here. But the funny thing is again, everybody's like, oh, I'll just get the XR over the TW. And one of the other big pain points on the TW is the rear drum brake. Now, the XR150L also has a rear drum brake, and they're the exact same size. They're both a 110 millimeter rear brake setup, or rear drum setup on the XR150L and on the TW200. So the next thing that really want to talk about is the tires. So the front tire on the XR150L is a 90-90-19. The rear tire is a 110-90-17. On the TW, you've got a 130-80-18, and on the rear, you've got a 180-80-14. Now, when it comes to tire choices, this is where another pain point for the TW is there aren't that many options for the tire size on the TW. There are a few of them out there, but there's not very many. Whereas if you have a 19-inch front and a 17-inch rear, you're going to have quite a few more options than you would with the TW. However, and this is where, you know, some people see differently on this, but the rear tire on that TW, with it being so wide, you get massive traction all over the place. And on the XR, with it being a narrower rear tire, I mean, I don't know that the traction is going to be there as much as it will be on the TW. So if you're not overly concerned about that, you know, the XR150 might not be a bad way to go. Now, let's go a few more here. Our wheelbase on the XR150L is 53.5 inches, and on the TW it's 52.2 inches. So the TW is a little bit shorter. The rake is going to be a little bit tighter on the TW than it is on the XR150L. So on the XR150, you've got a rake of 27 degrees, and on the TW, you've got 25.8 degrees. So I think if you're going, you know, in a straight line, that little bit more rake might be helpful. But when you're maneuvering and trying to turn, you know, on different trails, and this is where the TW might have an advantage, but some might call it a disadvantage as well. Being a little bit wider, they might say, oh, it's a lot harder to turn. But with that narrower wheelbase and that little bit tighter rake, it might actually be a little bit easier to maneuver than the XR150L. So ground clearance on the XR150, this is one that, you know, everybody says, oh, the ground clearance on the TW is almost non-existent. Well, the ground clearance on the TW is 10.4 inches. The ground clearance on the XR is 9.6 inches. So you've got almost a full inch difference between ground clearance on the TW, and they're saying, man, it's kind of non-existent already. I don't know if you're going to be doing a little bit more off-road, that the XR, I mean, a little bit more gnarlier off-road if the XR150, if you're going to want that little bit of extra ground clearance. Now, as far as skid plates go for the ground clearance, the TW has a few options. I've done videos on the Ricochet. I just did a video on the Tusk. ProCycle makes one. There's a few knockoffs that you can get on Amazon. And the one that I've seen so far for the XR150L is on Honda's website. They sell it. It's a plastic one. I don't know how sturdy or how solid that is. I just don't have that much information about it yet. So, again, if you're going to be going off-road, the TW with those skid plates, tried true. I've beat the tar out of mine with the XR. I don't know just yet. So let's go into a little bit more of it here, though. So the weight of the XR150L is 282 pounds, and the weight of the TW is 278 pounds. Now, when I was talking about the braking on here, this is where, you know, it might have a bigger brake disc, but you've got just a little bit more weight to slow down. And again, it's only 4 pounds. I can already see the comments, man, it's only 4 pounds, who cares? But as far as the stopping power, I don't know what kind of braking system they have on there. I don't know if it's a single or a dual piston. My guess is with the price point and with the beginning, this being more of an entry-level dual sport, I would say that that's also going to be a single piston on the XR150. So stopping power, I really don't think that it's going to be that much greater than the TW, even though it does have a little bit bigger disc on the front. Now, here's one thing that really kind of sets the XR apart from the TW is fuel capacity. One of the other pain points of the TW is that people have said, man, I wish I had a bigger fuel tank. There's folks out there that have been getting bigger fuel tanks for the TW200, but the fuel tank on the XR150L is 2.9 gallons. And the fuel tank on the TW is 1.8. Now, on Honda's website, they didn't specify exactly what the fuel mileage of the XR150L would be, and Yamaha has the TW sitting at 78 miles per gallon. Now, that varies due to a whole bunch of different things: how you ride, your elevation, your terrain, your weight, the humidity, all these different things. So, as far as fuel mileage goes, I think with my TW, I'm getting between 70 and 75 pretty consistently. So I'd be really interested to see what the XR150L has. Now, this is one thing that I actually kind of take a lot of pride in with the TW is the seat height. And the seat height is a big deal for me because I'm 5'6". I've got a 30-inch inseam. The TW is sitting at 31.1 inches, and the seat height on the XR150L is sitting at 32.8. Now, with the XR150L, though, where people are going to say it's probably better than the TW, the seat's going to be a little bit more narrow, whereas the seat on the TW is a little bit wider. Which brings me to another point. If you are going to be riding with a passenger, I'll pretty well guarantee that the TW is going to be more comfortable for a passenger than it will be on the XR150L. And with that being said, the lower grunt in the gearing is going to be better for carrying a passenger than the XR150L, and just the engine size for carrying a passenger is going to be better for the TW than it will be on the XR150L. Now again, both of these have 5-speed transmissions, and the TW's got that little bit bigger, gear ratio, which definitely has a lot more lower end torque, and I absolutely love my TW200s. I've been a huge fan of them, but I would love to see what the XR150L can do. So, the last thing that people are saying about the XR150L is the price. So, the XR150L is coming in at $3,000, and the TW is sitting at $5,000. Now, that's not including dealer markups. That's not including all the stuff that folks are doing right now with the dealer pricing and everything. But MSRP between the two is definitely a $2,000 difference. So here's the question: is the XR150L really something that you'd take that $2,000 price cut in and go, yep, I'll be happy with the XR150L, taking everything into consideration? Or would you spend that extra $2,000? Or is the TW even worth that $2,000 more than the XR150L? Put that in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. These are the specs that I've got so far between the two bikes. I'm still a huge TW fan, and me personally, I would take the TW over the XR150L. I've put a lot of miles on it. I've got a lot of experience with it. Not as much as some, it's more than others, but still, that TW200 is a flat-out reliable, awesome machine. So, I hope you found this video informative. If there's questions or comments, put those down below. And if anybody out there has an XR150L that would like to team up and do a collab with me, with the TW200s, let me know. I'd love to see the bike and see what it can do and put it up against the TW200 and see, hey, who comes out on the winner over the two bikes. But even then, they both have their ups, their downs, their pros, their cons. So again, put in the comments down below what you would take, the XR150L or the TW200. If you haven't already, hit like, hit subscribe, and follow along. I'm Matt. This is Mob Street, and thanks for watching.